Hey, good evening, Midwest Survivor. Time for dinner chat. So I want to say thank you to everybody that is clicking subscribe on the YouTube channel, that thumbs up, clicking that bell. You know, every person that views, every person that hits subscribe, it's important that we get the message out there that this is about helping people. This is about helping people that have experienced leadership abuses, church abuse, surviving narcissistic and toxic relationships, surviving narcissistic and toxic abuse, trauma bonding, people that are going through a job change, a career change, financial crisis. You know, rebuilding your life is so important, so vital, and to have to do it after the age of 40 is that much harder. So be sure to click the bell, be sure to hit subscribe, be sure to hit like. Check out the Facebook Shorts, the YouTube, or not the YouTube, but the TikTok videos, the X post. All that is going to be very vital. Just doing what I can to get content out there, and more importantly, I'm going through these things myself. I want to share my experiences and what I've undergone, so that when somebody else is going through the similar situation, there's another man out there that is saying, hey, you know what? It's tough, it's rough, but you can make it, you can endure, and you can survive. So this is part 3 of what leadership abuse is and what it looks like. So, we went through I think 4 or 5 steps. And what we're going to do is step number 6. An abusive leader makes subordinates inordinately dependent upon themselves and isolates them. So what that means is basically that the underlings of the abusive leader are dependent on the leader, and they isolate them and create a tight circle around them. It often makes them vulnerable. It makes them susceptible to what the leader wants them to do. It takes care of their needs. I knew of a leader that insulated himself around 2 very idealistic but very immature people. He provided a housing allowance, he provided a salary, he provided all these things for this one leader, and this one leader really wasn't that good in what he did. He was very lazy, and his wife was very destructive and condemning. So there was that. So an abusive leader often makes vulnerable subordinates monetarily, relationally, or emotionally dependent on them by taking care of their needs. It limits their growth, and it inhibits who they are as people. The next one is an abusive leader demands absolute loyalty, and I can say truthfully and honestly, I have seen this firsthand. They do demand absolute loyalty. The entire relationship between leader and subordinate, and not only that, but leaders and followers, is dependent on that loyalty. You'll hear terms like, well, I'm the leader and you've got to follow me, or you've got, if you love me, you will do blah 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 blah. If you respect me, you will do blah 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 blah. It's a completely manipulative relationship between the leader and the people that follow that leader. So, the abusive leader will demand that from them. They'll demand obedience. He'll demand complete and utter submission. And if somebody within the circle goes to somebody outside of the leader, that leader will view that as a personal betrayal of trust. So number 8, the abusive leader threatens or attempts to scandalize those that don't line up with the guidelines of the demands of that leader. I've seen this firsthand as well, where people that had critical thinking skills, that had ideas that were beyond the concept and the precepts of that leader chose to threaten, intimidate, blackmail, and extort those people that didn't comply with his demands or her demands. They slander them publicly. They denigrate them, berate them, tell them that they're rebellious or whatever. They refuse to drink the Kool-Aid of that leader. And there's nothing wrong with that. We were given a mind, and we were supposed to have our own ideas. The last thing that a person needs to do is develop a sheep or herd mentality and just go along with a leader just because they sound good, look good, and say good things. Number 9, an abusive leader uses and objectifies others for their own agenda. Sometimes a leader will have a whipping boy or whipping girl to say, okay, because they didn't follow my directions, this is what has happened to them. They don't value people for what they have to offer and who they are as people, but they objectify them and extract every bit of energy. They're kind of emotional and resource vampires that they only want people for what they can get out of them. Number 10, an abusive leader gets violent, exhibits rage when they don't have their way. This is a very narcissistic tendency and a very selfish tendency. I've seen this within my own family. I've seen this within leaders where they yell, scream, act like children, and basically act like spoiled children whenever they don't get their way. Oftentimes the victims or the people under that leader become codependent or complicit with the abuser's abuse of others. They enable it or they allow it to happen. Abusive leaders are narcissistic. They're focused on their own self-gratification and their own self-grandification. They try to make themselves bigger, better, build the proverbial statue of themselves as a savior, as a redeemer, or as somebody that came in at the last hour and rescued everything. It's almost a form of idol worship, of being their own god. And then finally, number 12, abusive leaders are control freaks. And I have seen this tendency with all of them. They want to control people, the narrative. They want to control how things get done, in what way they get done, who does them. People that don't bow down or give in to these control freaks are dismissed or thrown aside or cast aside or belittled. They demand obedience to the status quo, and they squash critical thinking and creativity. They want things to be mediocre. They don't want to see things rise and survive and thrive. If anything, they are self-sabotaging and self-destructive in that they would rather have people be obedient to that leader rather than to see critical thinking and self-determination and absolute creativity take root. The reality is that there are many forms of abusive leaders and what they look like and how they are in our world, in our churches, in our workplaces, in schools. Teachers can be very abusive. Co-workers, family members, anybody that you are following or admire, or somebody that you listen to in your life is a leader. And there are much more good leaders than there are abusive leaders. But here's the thing. Sometimes abusive leaders hide in plain sight. They cloak themselves in goodness and philanthropic mindset or the mindset of, well, I'm doing this because I love you. Well, there's an old story about a little boy that had a puppy. And the little boy loved this puppy. And the little boy cared about this puppy. And the little boy fed this puppy and cherished this puppy. Well, one day, the little puppy strayed away from the house. And the little boy went out and grabbed him and held on to him so tight that he suffocated the puppy. You know, sometimes leaders care about people so much that they suffocate them and stifle them and inhibit them. And parents can do the same thing. You know, school teachers can do the same thing. You know, there is such a mindset of, well, we've got to keep a hold and we've got to keep a control of people, and we can't let people think for themselves and be independent. That's not the case, because people are going to grow up. They're going to have their own thoughts. They're going to have their own ideas, their own theories, and they need to be able to go out and fail. Let me say that again. They need to go out and fail. They need to fail more, learn more, do more, fail more, learn more. And that's how a person is supposed to learn. You know, you learn more, you fail more. Fail more, learn more. So, Midwest Survivor for Dinner Chat. We just finished up the part 3 of abusive leaders and what they are and what they look like. So there'll be a new topic for Dinner Chat tomorrow night. As always, I leave you with encouragement. I want you to stay healthy. I want you to get healthy. I want you to be healthy, get strong, and be strong. Y'all have a good night. Enjoy your evening and take care.